This video is for the soft Muslim girl who wants to work on her goals, focus on her deen, and basically self-improve for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, specifically in these last 3 months of 2025. But how do we do that? How do we stay consistent when this dunya can be so distracting? How do we become disciplined? I like to practice soft discipline, and it has been amazing in helping me accomplish my goals in the past year. So in this video, I'd like to go over my definition of soft discipline and how we can use it to become better Muslims. We will also create a challenge together because honestly, achieving your 2025 goals is just so much more fun when you set yourself a challenge. So a 90-day challenge, if you will. So let's get into it. With 3 months left of the year, I am kind of looking at myself thinking, you can do better, and not necessarily in a negative way at all, more so like testing my own potential. There is this saying that I absolutely love, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not put a dream in your heart without providing the abilities to accomplish that dream. And this is just so beautiful, especially if you feel like you have been failing lately or feel like you actually cannot do what you thought you could do. When you feel this negativity arise, this quote kind of helps me get back up and continue. Maybe you've heard of the term the Great Lock-in, which is kind of the 2025 version of the winter arc, where in these last months of the year, we essentially get back to work. We build our habits, we build our routines, and we basically just want to achieve all the goals that we set for ourselves at the beginning of the year. For me, I always love a personal development challenge. I also want us to try this Great Lock-in and then have some sort of muslimah edition, because locking in to what exactly? What is it that you truly want? If you were to look at the Great Lock-in from kind of an Islamic perspective, then the answer to what are you locking into be locking into pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and locking into your akhirah. And I don't mean to say that we cannot set goals for ourselves that help us in this dunya, but I just want to make sure that when we create this challenge for ourselves, we put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, we put our deen first, and then after that we can set other goals as well. But essentially everything we do should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what even is self-discipline? It sounds kind of like the word soft and discipline shouldn't even be together, but I guess we can make our own rules. For me, self-discipline is the feminine approach to the discipline that you see online. After many years of consuming self-development content and creating the content myself as well, I will finally admit that I don't live this super disciplined life. I wake up early on some days in the week and I sleep in on other days. I work out, but I also have moments where I don't leave my house for days. I guess you could just call it balance, but I've had the wrong way of looking at it. Every time I rest, I feel bad for resting, which makes the rest not so calming, and which then leaves me tired for when I actually need to work. Self-discipline would be the act of building consistency with your habits and routines in a way that is kind to yourself. It might take more time for you to get from A to B, but there is nothing wrong with slow growth. So for me, although I love self-discipline, I'm still a work in progress just because the being kind to yourself part is difficult. That's also why for this 90-day challenge, I want to have some sort of an aspect within the challenge that not only allows kindness to yourself, but also encourages it as well. For this 90-day challenge, I want to do it a little bit different, just because instead of giving you a lot of journal prompts for you to write down, I kind of made a presentation. And what I want to do in this video is fill in the presentation, which is basically you presenting what you want to do for this great lock-in and why. But it doesn't even have to be to another person. But I'm making this presentation for myself, kind of to get really serious about it. So this is what I've made, and let's fill in the presentation together. So it starts off with a vision board for these last 3 months. But instead of creating the vision board first and then the goals later, I want to do it the other way around. Just because I think that once you have a very clear idea of what you want exactly, you can make the vision board that really fits it. So it really becomes a vision of the goals that you've already written down. Now, what we do a lot is that we are focusing on what we would like to add into our lives. So, for example, I want to read more books, I want to watch more lectures, want to wake up earlier. These are all habits that we want to welcome into our life, which is of course lovely. But I think what I do a lot is that I think a lot about the things that I want to add, but I don't think about what I no longer am going to do. So the things that I'm willing to give up to make room for those new habits. But this is actually a very important step. I read a quote that I think is very applicable for this, which is, progress is blocked by what you are refusing to let go. So yes, of course, we want to welcome in all these lovely habits, but we also want to think about what we need to let go in order to also kind of become the person that you want to become, and what are you sticking to right now that you shouldn't be. So let's answer the question together. What are you willing to give up? The main thing that I've written down that I'm willing to give up is actually doom scrolling / spending too much time on social media. Now, I think you might be able to add that as well. I don't want to answer for you, of course, so do the reflecting of yourself, of course, but I feel like we could all do a little bit less scrolling and a little more of whatever it is that we want to do more of. I wrote down 2 things. I wrote down doom scrolling and I wrote down watching irrelevant shows. Both of them can take up quite some time in my week, and I could be adding more of what I'm willing to give up. But for now, at least specifically for October, I am just writing down these 2 things, also because these are the things that kind of take the most time away from me that I could be using for something else. It is one thing to say that you're willing to give it up, and it's another thing to actually kind of promise to yourself that you are going to kind of quit doing it. It sounds so much like an addiction, but I guess for some of us it really is. So what you are willing to give up really should be something that you actually are willing to give up. So really think about it. That was the first question. The second question is actually kind of similar, but not really. Both of these questions that I'm asking, by the way, are part of the identification of the things that you are no longer going to do. So we started with what we are willing to give up, and now it's time to answer the question, which limiting beliefs do you need to let go of? Which is a little bit different, just because it's more kind of like a mental state or a way of thinking. A lot of the times we tell ourselves that we are a certain way, and we cannot really change that because it's who we inherently are. For example, you could say that you are inherently not a morning person, hence why it's not possible for you to wake up early and start your day earlier. But it's actually something that you can work on and change, because we are not this one static way of being. So for example, for me, the one limiting belief that I have that I really need to let go of is the limiting belief that I cannot learn Arabic, and that learning new surahs, so memorizing new surahs, is extremely difficult for me. And this also kind of links in a negative way to the portfolio of proof, which is basically something like an inner documentation of what you think you can do. And if you do it in like a positive way, then you have within you this portfolio of proof of every time you did something that you didn't think you were capable of. But over the years, I have built this kind of negative portfolio of proof of why I cannot learn Arabic, and why for me it's super difficult to learn new surahs, because my proof is that I haven't really learned any Arabic in the past few years, and it took me almost a year to memorize a new surah, which I felt was very embarrassing. And I hope you appreciate me opening up about this, because it is something that I feel kind of insecure about, which is the fact that even though I have reverted almost 3 years ago, my Arabic capability is pretty much 0. And I know you could be telling me like, why don't you just start a course, or why don't you do X, Y, Z? And I know there are a lot of things that you could be doing. Like I'm saying, this is something that I need to let go of, which is the limiting belief that I cannot learn it. And specifically for me, why it's so important to let go of this belief is, of course, because in the Quran, it is mentioned mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the Quran easy to understand and remember. So me saying that I cannot learn it or it's difficult for me to do it would kind of go against to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. And of course, in that case, the limiting belief that I personally have becomes much more important to let go of. But that's just an example of a limiting belief that you could be letting go of. So the reason why I think it's important to list down your limiting beliefs that you no longer want to have is because in combination with the question of what you are willing to give up physically, for example, it's, I think, even more important to think about what you are willing to let go of that you have stuck in your head. And also, if you think about it, another reason for example, why you might not be where you want to be right now is because you have like lovely goals and everything, but deep down you don't actually believe that you can be achieving those goals, or you could become a person who has certain things or does certain things because you have those limiting beliefs. So that's why it's a crucial step to really think about what you have kind of as a perspective of yourself. Like, what have you made your identity that shouldn't be your identity? Now for the next section, which is a little bit more fun, we've kind of gone through the more introspective and reflective part. Now let's go to the part where we identify new goals. So the presentation starts off with the question, who do you want to become, with a few journal prompts below that as well. So the first question actually is, how do I want the angels to describe me to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What habits or daily routines does my ideal self have? How do you want to be different for Ramadan 2026? And how am I spending my free time? I think the last question on how to spend your free time is specifically important but also fun to answer, just because it brings in the aspect of softness, in the sense that we are talking about free time. How would you spend your rest? A lot of us, I think, are spending our free time in between work and having to sleep, for example, doing something meaningless such as spending too much time on social media. And even though we are using our free time, we are not using it in such a way that we can actually see it as rest. So we really need to think of ways of how we can rest in such a way that we are actually rested. It's kind of asking, how do you want to make sure that how you build your discipline is actually in a soft way, where you can have moments for productivity and you have moments for actual rest. Now it's time to actually write down our goals, of course. So when it comes to the different sections of goals, I always get a little bit confused because you can have so many. You can have finance, career, personal, but for me that's kind of overwhelming if I put that many specific goals. But I will have the Deen goals specifically at the beginning, just because they are the most important. And I think that regardless of what you have for your goals, you should have a few goals for your Deen. So I recommend starting with those and then filling in the other sections for yourself, what are important for you. I will not be going over all the goals that I have, just because they are, of course, very personal. I will be sharing a few specific Deen goals that I think are beneficial to share, just so that you might get inspired by it as well. But I will not be going specifically over all my goals. So one Deen goal that I have is that I want to pray tahajjud more often. And basically the plan actually for this 90-day challenge is to divide it up into the 3 months, so into October, November and December. And I know that's not exactly 90 days, but it doesn't really matter that much. Why I say that is because I think 90 days, it is kind of long. So for you to stick to, for example, 5 daily non-negotiables for 90 days, it doesn't really leave room for growth, in the sense that there are maybe things that you would like to add or maybe things that you would like to remove. So what I will do is basically turn this 90-day challenge into a monthly challenge, and in the end we have done 90 days of soft discipline. For my first Deen goal, which is to pray tahajjud more often, I'm going to start with how I'm planning to do that for October, and I can start very slow. For example, if you haven't prayed tahajjud in a while, you can start with just saying, I want to pray tahajjud once every week. Then for November, you can say, I want to pray it twice or maybe 3 times a week. And in December, when you've made this really a habit, you might be able to say, I want to pray tahajjud every day. Also because tahajjud times are, of course, becoming more easy. And I think in December, you could easily wake up for tahajjud, but you have already made it a habit of doing so as well. So that's what I'm going to write down for a little bit, specifically the goal that I have, and then also why I have that goal. So we started off with identifying what we need to let go of. Then we identified our new goals. Now let's identify our new way of operating. Basically, how exactly will we achieve these goals and how exactly will we practice self-discipline? Specifically, again, like I said before, I will be dividing this into how our operations basically will go for October, November, and December. And I can pre-fill in what I think I will be doing in November and December, but I will be reassessing that just before the month starts. Let's write down the goals that we want to focus on for this month, and then also what success at the end of the month would look like. And then the specific part of how we are actually achieving this or like building this self-discipline is writing down both daily non-negotiables as well as weekly non-negotiables. I used to only do daily non-negotiables, but then I realized that there are a few things that you don't necessarily want to do daily or have time to do daily, but you do want to do them every week in order to build towards your dream self. To take the habit of tahajjud, for example, if you are not used to praying tahajjud, but you do want to build the habit of praying tahajjud, putting that on your daily non-negotiables list can be kind of demotivating, just because a lot of the time you might not be able to actually get it done, and then you feel bad for not completing all your daily non-negotiables, when in reality it should have been on your weekly non-negotiables from the start and slowly build its way up to the daily non-negotiables. So I finished my plan for October, and basically I'm finished with the entire presentation, including the vision board as well. I'm actually going to present this plan, I think, to my husband. That's because I think it's good to have some sort of accountability, in the sense that you share your goals with someone you trust, and then they can keep asking you like, how is it going with this goal, or are you doing the things that you wanted to do? So I highly recommend doing that as well. Maybe team up with someone who also wants to do the great lock-in muslimah edition. So I'll just go set up the presentation real quick. I really hope this video benefited you. I feel like it was, of course, a lot of talking, but I guess when you are preparing for a new season, a new era of you, it is a lot of thinking. So hence why I've been talking a lot. If you do this 90-day challenge, it not only is kind of a preparation for 2026, but you can also kind of see it as preparation for Ramadan 2026, just because Ramadan is, I think, in February, around February. So if you do these 90 days of self-discipline, you will be building these habits and routines that will really help you for Ramadan as well. And I didn't actually mention it just now, but basically at the end of the presentation there is this statement that you can make to yourself, basically, where the sentence starts with "this fall I am," and then you can fill it in, basically what you will be doing this fall and what you are kind of promising to yourself. And I just want to share my statement with you, just because I think it's very ambitious but also very me. My sentence is basically, "this fall I am locking in to the version of myself that does it all," and then in between brackets it says "very slowly." So I am trying to be doing a lot of things at once, also removing a lot of things at once, but I'm going to be doing it very slowly. And I think that is the whole essence of self-discipline, because like I said in the beginning of the video, even though I am someone who talks about softness a lot and like self-discipline in general, I feel like I can do a little bit better at it, just because I am still kind of harsh to myself from time to time, and I could be better at resting. But I'm very excited because now I kind of have made a new definition of rest, where inshallah I can no longer, for example, scroll on my phone and think I am resting at that moment. I've made a list of things that I consider to be rest, and then inshallah I can do those things whenever I have free time instead of spending time on my phone. For example, the things that I have on my resting list are going on a walk, reading, journaling. Those are things that feel very calming to me, and those are the things that I want to do in my free time. I actually don't know how to connect the TV with my laptop so that I can share the presentation, but I'm going to be asking my husband for that. Like I said before, this 90-day challenge is divided into the 3 months. So for November and December, I will again make a new video of how I'm going to preparing for the next month, so we can have kind of these little moments in between where we can do an update together. But yeah, that was all for today's video. If you want to do the challenge together, let me know in the comments what your goals are, or like what you will have as your either daily non-negotiables or weekly non-negotiables. And yeah, I cannot wait to enter this new era together. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.